Picture this. It's 3 in the morning and you're flat on your back, eyes wide open, running through every financial nightmare that could blindside you by sunrise. The car sounds wrong, your laptop is dying, your job feels shaky. The dog hasn't been right, and you already know the vet bill is going to hurt. Ring a bell? Now here's something I want you to stay with me on, because what I'm about to walk you through completely changed how I think about money, and I promise by the end of this video you're going to see one specific number in a way you never have before. Most folks assume financial milestones are just numbers that wealthy people invented to make the rest of us feel behind. But there's actual psychology and hard math behind why certain dollar amounts trigger massive shifts in your everyday life. And the first real game changer isn't $1 million. It isn't even 100 grand. It's 10,000. And I'm going to show you exactly why, including one psychological effect that almost nobody talks about that might honestly be the most valuable thing in this entire video. My name is Nick, and I spend a borderline unhealthy amount of time thinking about money, human behavior, and why certain people glide through financial chaos while everyone else loses sleep over their checking account balance. Hit subscribe and drop a thumbs up if this one shifts your perspective. It genuinely helps. But first, before we even get to what makes 10 grand so powerful, I need to show you something most people completely skip over. And it starts at the grocery store. That moment when you're doing silent math in your head, trying to figure out whether you can swing the name brand cereal or whether you're stuck with the off-brand stuff that tastes like flavored cardboard. Or when your crew wants to grab dinner and you have to cook up a creative excuse because you can't admit that a $25 plate would wreck your entire week's budget. That is the daily reality for tens of millions of Americans living check to check right now. Every single financial move becomes a chess match. Every surprise expense feels like the floor dropping out from under you. You are always playing defense, always reacting, never once getting to make a real forward move toward your own future. But stay with me here, because the shift I'm about to describe, the one that happens at exactly $10,000, is not what most people expect. Not even close. There is a specific psychological transformation that kicks in the moment you stack your first 10,000. And it has absolutely nothing to do with going out and spending it. Honestly, most people who hit this mark don't change their spending habits in any dramatic way. The change is quieter than that, and a whole lot more powerful. Here's the first thing that flips, and this one surprised me when I first ran across the research on it. It's your entire relationship with risk. When your savings is sitting at zero, every decision feels dangerous. A new job, moving cities, even booking a trip becomes a massive source of dread because you know one wrong move could send everything sideways. But the moment $10,000 is sitting in your account, those exact same decisions start feeling manageable. You're not about to quit your job tomorrow and become a professional juggler, but you might finally feel confident enough to go after the promotion you've been leaving on the table for months. You might actually pull the trigger on the course or certification that could bump your income up in a real way. The cushion doesn't make you careless. It gives you permission to think past Friday. And here's something that's going to sound a little wild, but stick with me, because this is where the science gets genuinely interesting. Neuroscientists have found that financial security actually lowers your cortisol levels. Cortisol is the stress hormone your body produces when it feels threatened, which means hitting $10,000 doesn't just fix your finances on paper. It literally changes the chemistry running through your body every single day. Now think about the last time your car threw a warning light at you. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, that check engine light might as well be a countdown to catastrophe. Your brain immediately races to repairs, credit cards, and that phone call you really don't want to make to a family member. But when you've got 10 grand saved, that same dashboard light is just a nuisance. You're not thrilled about it, but you are not in free fall either. That shift from panic to mild irritation sounds small. It is not small. It sends ripple effects through your entire life in ways most people never connect back to money. When financial stress stops eating up your mental bandwidth, everything changes. You make sharper decisions. You sleep better. You show up differently at work. You've got more patience for the people around you. And here's the part that most finance content completely glosses over. All of that reclaimed mental energy gets redirected toward actually moving your life forward instead of just keeping it from falling apart. But I want to hold on that sleep point for a second because there is a specific piece of research I'm going to come back to later in this video that connects financial security to sleep quality in a way that I think is going to genuinely surprise you. Keep that in mind. We're coming back to it. Here's something the average person completely misses about the $10,000 milestone. The biggest benefit isn't in spending the money. It's in knowing it exists. Experts call this the emergency fund effect, and it might honestly be one of the most underrated ideas in all of personal finance. An emergency fund isn't actually about emergencies. It's about the quiet, steady confidence that comes from knowing you could handle one if it showed up tomorrow. Most people who build $10,000 in savings never crack it open for a disaster. Instead, they use the foundation it creates to go after opportunities. They invest in education. They launch something. They relocate somewhere better. Or they simply have enough mental clarity to focus on growing their income because they're not constantly white-knuckling it through the month. There's also a confidence factor here that's nearly impossible to put a number on, but completely impossible to miss once you feel it. When you know the money is sitting there, you carry yourself differently. You negotiate harder. You're willing to walk away from a bad deal because you're not desperate. And that energy attracts better opportunities across the board. Now you might be thinking 10,000 sounds completely out of reach if putting away even $100 a month feels like a stretch right now. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the thing that most people get completely backwards. The hardest part of building that savings isn't the actual saving. The hardest part is starting to see yourself as the kind of person who saves money. Most people treat saving like a crash diet. They cut hard for 2 or 3 months, push the savings rate up, then burn out completely and snap right back to square one. But the people who actually get to 10,000 don't treat saving like a temporary punishment. They start treating it like a personality trait they're building on purpose. Once that identity shift locks in, everything else follows. You naturally start spotting ways to cut costs you never noticed before. You get creative about pulling in extra income. You start thinking months and years ahead instead of just getting through the week. And here's the part that I think is the most motivating thing about this whole process. It genuinely gets easier as you go. Your first 1,000 is rough. Real lifestyle changes, real willpower required. Your second 1,000 comes a little faster because the habits are starting to form. By the time you're pushing toward your 5th or 6th, it starts running almost on autopilot. But there's a mathematical piece to this that I need to walk you through because this is where 10,000 becomes almost a magical number, and I don't say that lightly. $10,000 covers the overwhelming majority of surprise expenses that financially knock people completely off course. Car repairs, medical bills, sudden job loss, family emergencies, most of these situations resolve for under 10 grand. Which means once you cross this line, you are essentially insulated from the financial gut punches that keep millions of Americans locked in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle for years, sometimes decades. But the deepest upgrade that comes with saving your first 10,000 isn't protection. It's how differently you start seeing money itself. Before you have savings, money feels like something that just disappears every 2 weeks. Every dollar spent feels gone forever. But once 10,000 is anchoring your financial life, you start to understand that money can actually produce more money. That's when investing, side income, and passive cash flow stop sounding like things for other people and start sounding like logical next steps. Not because you became a financial genius overnight, but because you finally have the mental space to look past just keeping the lights on. When you're not lying awake about rent, you can start thinking about a retirement account. When groceries aren't a source of stress, you can start actually learning about the market. And this leads me to something that I think is going to reframe this entire conversation for you. Here's something that might genuinely rattle your thinking. The person with $10,000 saved is actually closer to financial freedom than someone with zero saved, even if that second person earns twice the income. Sit with that for a second. Why? Because the saver has mastered the single most important skill in building real wealth. And it isn't making money, it's keeping it. You probably know someone pulling six figures who is somehow always broke. Nice car, nice apartment, $20 salads, zero savings. And you might know someone making 40 grand a year who has quietly stacked a real cushion by being intentional about every dollar. The gap isn't income, it's mindset. Saving your first $10,000 is essentially a crash course in building that mindset from the ground up. You learn to tell the difference between what you want and what you actually need. You get skilled at trimming costs without feeling like you're punishing yourself. And most importantly, you build the muscle of delayed gratification, which might be the single most valuable financial skill any person can develop. Now let's get into the practical side of this, because I want to be specific about what $10,000 actually does for you in your real daily life. For starters, it handles almost any car repair outside of needing a completely new engine. The average auto emergency runs somewhere between $500 and $3,000. With 10 grand in the bank, a broken down car goes from a financial crisis to an annoying Tuesday that you handle and move on from. Medical surprises get a lot less terrifying too. Even with mediocre insurance coverage, most urgent care visits, trips, or minor procedures land well within this range. You're not walking into major surgery covered, but you can handle the vast majority of health issues that catch you off guard. Job loss, which is probably the scariest financial scenario most Americans carry around in the back of their minds, becomes something you can actually survive on your own terms. $10,000 gives you roughly 3 to 6 months of breathing room depending on your monthly expenses. That is enough runway to be selective about where you land next, instead of grabbing the first offer out of pure desperation. But here's where it really opens up. And this is the part I want you to pay close attention to because it goes far beyond protection. $10,000 doesn't just shield you from disasters. It actively unlocks doors that are completely closed without it. Say you hear about a certification program that could lift your salary by 10 grand a year, but runs $2,000 upfront. Without savings, that conversation ends before it starts. With your financial base in place, it's one of the clearest investment decisions you'll ever make. Or maybe a friend tells you they're launching something and looking for a small early investor. Without savings, all you can do is wish them luck. With $10,000 behind you, you actually have the ability to participate in something that could shift your financial future in a real direction. And I want to be real with you here. I'm not telling you to drop your whole emergency fund into your buddy's latest idea, but having options feels completely different from having none. The mental and physical health benefits of this are something I promised earlier I'd come back to, and here it is. Research consistently shows that people with emergency funds report significantly better sleep quality than those without. Financial anxiety is one of the leading drivers of chronic insomnia in America. Cutting that stress has real, immediate, measurable effects on your physical health. Your relationships improve too. Money stress is one of the most commonly cited causes of divorce and family conflict in this country. When the bills aren't keeping you up at night, you show up with more energy for the people who matter most. You're less short-tempered, less on edge, more present in the moments that actually count. There's also something worth spending a minute on about how differently you carry yourself once you know money is in your corner. You walk into a job interview with a completely different posture when you don't desperately need to land it. You push back on the first salary offer. You ask for better benefits. You negotiate because fear isn't running the conversation anymore. That energy gets noticed. It leads to better offers and bigger paychecks, which kicks off a cycle of progress that starts feeding itself forward. But I want to address the elephant in the room directly. $10,000 might feel completely unreachable if you're deep in the paycheck grind right now. The good news is, nobody said you have to get there all at once. Going too fast usually ends in burnout, and you end up back at zero. The people who actually make it there started with embarrassingly small amounts. $50 a month. Sometimes $25. What makes the difference isn't the size of the deposit. It's that the deposit keeps showing up every single month without exception. Once that habit is locked in, you raise the amount gradually as your income grows or as you find fat to trim in your expenses. Here's a number that should put some fire under you. The average American drops over $3,000 a year on coffee runs, eating out, and convenience purchases alone. That's before you touch car payments or subscriptions. If you redirected just a third of that towards savings, you'd be sitting on $10,000 in under 3 years. I'm not telling you to never eat at a restaurant again, but I am telling you that most people have significantly more wiggle room in their budgets than they're willing to admit to themselves. The divide between the person who builds savings and the person who doesn't usually comes down to awareness and intentionality, not income level. The compounding effect of having $10,000 in your corner goes way beyond the immediate safety net. It rewires how you think about risk. It changes how you approach new opportunities. It fundamentally shifts how you plan. But maybe most importantly, it proves to yourself that you can actually follow through on a financial goal. And that proof creates forward momentum toward even bigger ones. Once you've got your first 10 grand, the next 10 feels like something you've already done before. Because you have. Before long, you are genuinely on the path toward financial independence. Not because luck showed up or someone handed you something, but because you locked in the habits and the mindset that make building wealth feel like the natural next step. Now I need to tell you about something called decision fatigue, because this might be the piece of this whole conversation that hits the hardest. It sounds like corporate buzzword nonsense, but it is a well-documented psychological phenomenon with real consequences. Every single day, you quietly burn through mental energy making tiny financial calls. Generic pasta or name brand? Buy lunch or packet? Premium gas or regular? Every one of these micro decisions chips away at your mental reserves. By the time evening rolls around, you're worn down from an entire day of running silent financial calculations in the background of your brain. But here's what changes when you've got $10,000 in the bank. About 90% of those daily money decisions simply stop mattering. You're not grabbing the off-brand option out of fear. You're grabbing it because you prefer it, or you're going name brand because today you feel like it. That sounds minor until you actually do the math on how much mental energy you'd free up by eliminating 50 survival-based calculations before noon. I know someone who told me the first time they walked into a grocery store after crossing the $10,000 line, they nearly cried. Not because they went on a lavish spree, but because they realized for the first time that they were choosing food based on what they wanted to eat instead of what they could afford to put in the cart. That kind of freedom is something most people don't even know they're missing until the day they finally feel it. Now let's be straight about something that personal finance creators don't always lead with. Having $10,000 saved does not make you rich. It does not mean you're walking out of your job to play beach volleyball for a living. You're still going to think twice before dropping $1,000 on something you don't really need. But what it gives you is breathing room. And breathing room is the foundation underneath every smart financial decision you will ever make. When you're not gasping for financial air, you can actually think clearly and strategically about your money instead of just lurching from one crisis to the next. Maybe you notice your car insurance renewal is coming up, and for once you have the headspace to actually shop around instead of rubber stamping whatever rate they send you. Maybe you realize your phone plan is bleeding you, and you can make the switch without sweating the transition fees. These moves might only save you $50 to $100 a month, but when financial stress isn't clouding your judgment, you start seeing these opportunities constantly. And those small wins stack up over time into serious savings that put your next financial goal firmly within reach. Here's a quirk of human psychology that trips most people up, and I save this one for near the end because I think it reframes everything we've talked about today. When you have nothing saved, every dollar feels sacred, because losing one brings you one step closer to the edge. But once you've got $10,000 built up, individual dollars start carrying a little less weight. And that paradoxically makes you far more willing to put money toward things that can actually grow your earning potential. Someone with no savings might skip a $50 networking event because $50 is $50 when you're running on empty. But the person with 10,000 saved might walk through that same door and end up meeting someone who changes the entire direction of their career. Having a cushion doesn't make you reckless with money. It makes you willing to invest it where it actually counts. I have watched this play out more times than I can keep track of. People who build their first real savings cushion often experience a sudden acceleration in their careers, not because money directly hands you a promotion, but because financial security gives you the nerve to take swings that people without a cushion simply cannot afford to take. And then there's the social dimension of all of this that almost never makes it into personal finance content, but that everyone who has lived it knows is completely real. When financial stress is running your life, it quietly shapes how you show up around other people in ways you might not even notice. You start avoiding social situations because you can't foot the bill. You pull back and go quiet because you're embarrassed about where things stand. You might even start resenting people in your circle who seem to have it more together than you do. So there it is. $10,000 isn't just a line item in your savings account. It is a complete psychological overhaul that reaches into every single corner of how you live your life. From actually sleeping at night to walking into interviews like you belong there instead of hoping someone takes a chance on you, this one milestone sets off a chain reaction that most people never see coming until they're standing on the other side of it looking back. If you're staring at a bank balance right now that looks like somebody's old area code, do not let it break you. Start smaller than feels meaningful. Stay consistent no matter what life throws at you. And keep coming back to this. The version of you that gets built while saving your first $10,000 is worth more than the number in that account will ever be.